Good afternoon and welcome to another episode of A Contagious Smile, where every smile tells a story. I have Danielle with us today. She has such a story of strength and inspiration. I can't wait just to dive right into this. Thank you so much for making time to be here with us today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Of course, of course. You are a survivor of brain trauma. You are a public speaker. You are just an inspiration, just what you went through alone. I want to share your story. It is heart-wrenching, but what you have done since is amazing. And I just want to like hug you and congratulate you on your growth at where you've been and come to and where you are now. So tell us what happened. What happened?
Yeah, my life was going pretty normally. I was very fortunate growing up, went to a great school for college, University of Virginia, got a degree in biology, went out, was doing Teach for America. I love to give. Teach for America, you go into a low income area somewhere in the US, and I was placed in Denver, Colorado. So I was living my dream. I got to snowboard on the weekends. I got to serve those kids during the week, and life couldn't have gotten any better in my world anyway. And I was on summer break from teaching, and I was with a friend. I was out in Baltimore City, Maryland. Spent the night. It was his birthday. Woke up early next morning to go meet my parents for a wedding, and someone had been out all night partying, was drunk, got in their car, and as I was leaving the city, they hit me head on. They came into my lane, and our cars just, headlight to headlight crash. Airbags went off, everything. And it's wild because at the time of the accident, I looked okay. Like I looked like I look right now, minus I had some burns from the airbag because I've been wearing a dress. And I got out of the car. I was physically fine. The paramedics came, and they said they did like a little check on me, and they said, we don't even think we need to take you in. And I kept saying to them, like, I feel out of it. And they said to me, it's just shock. Like, you're just in shock. It'll wear off. I was like, okay, like I've never been in an accident before. I'm like, okay, it's shock. Like, I didn't know. My parents get there, and my mom's like, something's not right with you. And I'm like, I know.
Tried to say that.
Completely out of it. And so they take me to a clinic, which interestingly was like connected to a concussion clinic, but the lady there also totally missed. She said, oh, you're just in shock. It'll wear off. Like they gave me something for inflammation, for whiplash, whatever, sent me on my way. And in the days and weeks that followed, I felt like I was crazy because my head felt like it was exploding. I never had so much pressure and pain. Like when you have a sinus, if you get the sinus infection, like that kind of pressure, it was like that times 100. I felt like there was a vice grip on me. My whole head felt like it was pulsing. I couldn't concentrate. I like any sort of light or noise. I was like completely overwhelmed. I couldn't follow conversations. We got into my primary care doctor, and he said, no, you've had some sort of brain trauma. You need to go to a neurologist. And finally get in with one. And they said to me, look, you have what's called a mild traumatic brain injury. And I'll never forget because I was like, that is an oxymoron. Like,
Right? How is something mild when it comes to my brain?
yeah, I said, this doesn't feel mild. And they said, well, you're not in a coma and you don't have a brain bleed. And I was like, okay, you're right. Like, let's be grateful for that. And I said, well, so what do we do? And they said, we try to get people that have had brain trauma to the state that you're in now. And I said, you gotta be kidding me. I said, I can't operate, And they said, well, with these types of injuries, a lot of times there's spontaneous healing in the first like 1 to 3 months. So you should be fine. Like it'll self-clear. There's nothing you can do. And I was like, okay, now this is circa like 2012. This is just when like concussion awareness was coming on the scene.
Right.
Like NFL, our veterans, like there was more and more, like now there's more awareness. Then there wasn't as much. So I went back to work. Like I literally attempted to go back to work. I couldn't remember the kids' names. Like I was lesson planning. It was taking me 12 hours to do a lesson plan. Like it was a complete mess. And so I went on a medical leave. Really aggressively went at trying to get better because the Western community didn't really give me answers. I was very fortunate. My mom owned a yoga studio in Annapolis, Maryland. And because of that, she really got to know the wellness community in our area. And so we had so many people, like hyperbaric oxygen treatments, neurobiofeedback. I changed my diet completely. You know, I was doing craniosacral work, like all this stuff to help support. And still, after my medical leave, those 6 weeks, it was like, no, I was still a mess. So I lost my job and my ability to live independently, you know, with no income coming in. And I was having complete panic attacks whenever I'd get in the car.
Yeah.
Because anything unexpected that happened, like my whole system was so on edge. I would literally, like, my body would go numb. I'd hyperventilate. Like, it was intense. And I couldn't push through it. You know, my whole life, I've been an athlete, and I think it developed a certain mentality in me that you keep going. I know how to drive myself and perform and all of that. And it wasn't happening. And the wild thing was I would look in the mirror and I looked like this. And so I'm looking at myself going like, get it together, Danielle, like pull it together. And my body just couldn't. So, you know, I moved home, and I will say, I think that losing my independence was one of the hardest things. Having to, not that, like, I love my family, you know, my parents, I thank God they could take care of me and I could move back in with them, and they're wonderful people. But it's something about not having the financial like means to be able to make a decision, or like, it was like I was completely dependent on them. And I wanted to work, but like my physical body couldn't work. And so it was really very difficult. And my whole identity, honestly, had been wrapped up in who I was in the world. Like, Danielle's the snowboarder, Danielle's, you know, the achiever, the athlete, the good friend, the, you know, person that gives, like the teacher. All of those things were wiped out. And then here I am, like, I'm in a dark room, literally blackout fabric, because I can't even handle natural light. And it's like, well, who am I when all of this is gone? And what in the world is my future going to be? Because I couldn't even plan out like a friend coming to visit me in 2 hours, because I didn't know how I'd be feeling.
Right.
And it was it was a really dark time, like severe depression, a lot of panic attacks. And my mind just didn't know how to handle it. And I'll never forget, 1 year after my accident, I went to my neurologist, and he said to me, Danielle, with your type of injury, the body's done all the healing it's going to do. And he said, this is your new normal, and you need to adjust your life to your symptoms, and you need to move on. And I was like, you're fired.
Right.
Can you imagine? Like, I think doctors mean well sometimes, but I'm like,
that's why it's called practicing medicine.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. Like, it's so crazy. I wonder how many people have sat in his office and just like taken that as truth, you know? And I thank God, I think it was my higher self came in and was like, no, Danielle, like, there's more for you in this life and you will get there. It's just going to take time. But what I will say, it was a punch in the gut in that it made me think, well, if the physical issues are permanent, what can I do about the mental emotional piece? Because my emotions and my thoughts were awful. You know, I mean, I was questioning if I wanted to stay on this planet. And it was like, that needs to get under control. And that is within my control. And I'll tell you what, it was this, like, you know, I had been a victim for an entire year. I had been saying, this isn't fair. This shouldn't have happened to me. You know, why me? I didn't deserve this. And looking from the outside, everyone else is saying the same thing to me. Oh my God, poor Danielle. Like, she never deserved anything like this. But you think about it, who does deserve that? Nobody deserves that. And I'm like, that mentality was not helpful to me.
Right.
And I started to realize, in that mentality, my power was outside of myself. And when your power is outside of you, you are powerless. And I started to say, okay, Danielle, what can you control? External world, like, not much. Accident happened. He was drunk. I've got a brain injury. Like, that's here. It's not going anywhere. So what can I do that's within my control? Because it's the external world plus your internal response that creates your reality. My internal response had been victimhood. My reality was miserable. So then I said, no, my internal response is going to be, what is this making possible?
Right.
What can I do? You know, I had to just stop thinking about the past because it was depressing. And I had to stop thinking about the future because it was full of anxiety because I didn't know what was going to happen. And I said, be present. And I just, in every moment, I said, what could I do right this very moment that would bring me joy? And like at the beginning, it was like nothing, you know, like my brain's like, everything's miserable.
Right.
But then it became like, well, you can pet the dog. You could watch a funny video online. You could call your friend. You could go on a walk. You could watch the sunset tonight. Like you could go get strawberries because you really like strawberries. Like all these little things. And it's like the world started to shift. Like my world started to shift. I started a gratitude journal. So at the end of the day, I forced myself before I went to bed to write something, anything that I was grateful for that day, because always my mind was spinning on all the stuff that was not fair, that shouldn't have been happening. You know, that's where my head was. So I had to literally rewire my brain to look at the positive. What good things happened today? And it was hard at the beginning.
Yeah.
And then it was like a flood of positivity. It was like, I can't pick one because 100 wonderful things happened, you know?
I'm so glad that you're better and you're here on this side now. So did they give you a rate of impact, like the rate of speed that was the impact of the accident?
You know, they asked like, how fast were you going? How fast was he going? That kind of thing. And I remember like, there's so much that happened so fast. Like I was pushing my brakes. It was like 35-mile-an-hour zone. I was pushing my brakes. So I was probably down to about 25 and he was speeding because he had actually fallen asleep. So, and his car was moving downhill and it was just going. So we think he was probably going around maybe 40, 45. So.
And your airbag deployed, did it total your car?
Oh yeah, car total. And my brain basically, like I didn't have trauma to like, you couldn't see trauma to my face, but my brain hit my skull on the inside and it tore like the myelin sheath. And that's stuff that like scans couldn't pick up. Like they did a CT scan on me. My brain was still in alignment. They're like, you're fine. And I'm like, I am so far from fine. Like,
right. You're just not picking it up. You're not seeing it. You're not listening.
Yeah, exactly. The first test that showed something was a neuropsych evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that one picked up that I was like super below average on like processing speed, you know, and then I was way above average on other stuff. And they're like, yeah, this like difference. And I said, yeah. And I'm not average, like not to toot my own horn. I'm like, but I went to a top university, like my brain is sharp, you know, like, but I didn't have a baseline before the accident. So there's no way to say, well,
no idea.
Before. Yeah. So even the stuff that I was average, I was like, no, that's not normal. That's not Danielle.
That's not my average. Right.
Yeah. Right. So, but it showed me very below average on some stuff, which was like upsetting to see, but also like validating, where I was like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah, I'm dumbfounded by the fact that during right after the accident, that the first responders didn't C-spine you. They didn't.
Oh my God, Victoria. Like, so I like literally.
That could have exacerbated your injury.
Yes. If I had a bleed, we would have been in trouble because, you know, we're standing on the scene, then I get in my parents' car, then we're driving, like, and I actually, I joined a trauma survivor network and I went and spoke to paramedics, like as part of during my recovery, for this exact reason. Cause I'm like, look, the way that I was I presented like I was normal because I looked normal, but I had an internal injury and they totally missed it.
Right.
And so, yeah, so many paramedics came up to me and were like, I'm so sorry. And I've had similar situations. I insist that we put them in the ambulance and we go check them out. And I'm like, yeah, continue insisting because you never know. And
they're supposed to C-spine you and then take you in for an evaluation. Like that's why they collar you. That's why they make sure, because they don't, especially when the deployment of the airbag, you got the burns and all that other stuff, you still need to be checked out.
I know. And they could see the car. And because I took pictures of the car that day and, or somebody did, I didn't, somebody else thought to do that. I got the pictures and, you know, I brought them with me when I gave the talks and they were like, just looking at the car, we don't even have to look at you. Like just looking at the car, that's automatic. Like you should have been taken in.
Was it a big car or a smaller size car?
It was a Mazda. It was a 4-door.
Okay.
I think it was a Mazda 6.
Yeah. And the other guy, he probably had like a scratch on him.
I feel like he was in like a Lincoln Town Car. That might be incorrect, but I feel like that's what it was. And he didn't have a seatbelt on. I didn't see him that morning. They kind of kept us separate. There were 10 runners that were actually like on South Charles Street, and they saw the whole thing. 5 of them came to me, 5 went to him. And when the police arrived, they arrested him. He didn't have a license. He didn't have insurance. It wasn't his car. Like it was a total mess.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it's like total mess. But I have to say, and it might sound weird to say for some to hear this, I am so grateful it happened.
No, I totally get where you say that for. Yeah.
Yeah, it is like what has opened up since then is amazing. Aspects of myself that I didn't realize, questions that I was able to ask that I think most people go through life and never ask. Like, why am I here? What is the purpose of this life? You know, like I had the time to ruminate on these things and to realize like I am more than my thoughts. That was
Yes.
probably the most profound realization of the whole thing was, okay, I am actually there before, during, and after a thought. It's kind of like the sky and a cloud moving through. And sometimes it's like the thoughts are so intense, like it's like a hurricane, you know, but the sky is still back there. Like
Right.
there, me, I am the one witnessing it all. And when I realized that, changed everything. Because then I went, okay, well, where the heck are these thoughts coming from? Because they're not helpful.
Right.
I got to change them,
Right.
you know? And I started to see, I call it like looking through life with sunglasses. I started to realize there were some like patterns and belief systems that were just locked in me from stuff that had happened in childhood and whatever else. And I was seeing things through like glasses that were not helpful. Like for me, it was a worthiness issue. I was
Mm-hmm.
feeling like I wasn't worthy, wasn't lovable, all this wild stuff. And I was watching it because I had the time to, and I wasn't so busy doing in life. I would see a situation, I would watch myself get triggered. And rather than, I think so frequently in life, we blame the trigger,
Yeah.
the situation, the person, the whatever. Really, the trigger is the teacher. And it's teaching you what is unresolved inside of you that you need to address. And if you don't listen, the triggers will get louder and louder and louder.
Yes.
And it's like life is our teacher, and it's trying to show us like, hey, let go of this stuff. This feeling of not being worthy is not serving you. It's putting you in situations where you have no worth again and again and again and again.
Mm-hmm.
And until you decide you're worthy, you're going to keep attracting it in.
Right.
And it's like, it is harsh because I think sometimes we think someone externally is going to come save us, but it's like the person in the mirror is the one, and it's an internal thing. And when you realize that those thoughts, they're not you, they're
Mm-hmm.
just something that got lodged in there a while ago, and
Right.
you can actually change them and you can actually release them, and they are begging to be released, which
Mm-hmm.
is why they keep getting triggered. You know, now you're going to set yourself free. And so I believe wholeheartedly that people go through trauma and intense things in life when they're ready. Their soul is ready for the next level. Their soul is saying it's time for you to evolve and deal with some stuff. And because if life is just going well, you're not going to deal with it. You need to hit an intensity so that you deal with it. And it's like we go to the gym and we work out and we get stronger, you know, by breaking down our muscle and getting, you know, heavier and heavier weights. Life does the same thing for us, but no one teaches us this, you know.
Right.
It's like life is getting harder and it's getting more intense at times because your mental, emotional, and spiritual strength needs to go up. You got to realize the capacities you've got. You've got to go in and pull some stuff out that's been untapped. You know, it has to get stronger like the muscle, and it doesn't always feel good. But
Right.
the other side is amazing. That's why I talk about post-traumatic growth all the time, because I'm like, when people realize that it's happening for them, so they can realize the strength within, that's the moment everything changes.
So you have turned, I'm sorry, I keep looking up. My whole property is on cameras and we have 25 puppies everywhere. And I keep looking and they keep distracting me. So I'm sorry, I keep looking up. We just, you know, like I told you, we breed golden retrievers for emotional support dogs. And we have 25 puppies and 11 adult dogs, and then my service dog and my daughter's service dog. And so it's so crazy. And we have this beautiful kennel system, and my daughter had let them out. So it keeps catching my eye because there's cameras everywhere. And so you see all the screens anyway, but they're out there playing and it's so cute. And they're tug of warring with the rope. It's just so cute to watch them. So I apologize for that. You,
That's okay. I'd be distracted by 25 puppies too.
they're so cute. I mean, like, look at this little one. They're so cute
I
and
know.
cuddly. Oh, they're so cute. Anyway, I'm so sorry. You turned your pain into your power. How did you do that?
This self-reflection, you know, I think that, well, it's interesting because my story, doesn't end with the mental emotional stuff. So I got my mental and emotional world more under control. Like, and I'm not saying I did it perfectly. There were still days that were bad days, but I didn't judge myself. I just said, this has got to be felt. Like, this is intense stuff that I'm going through. Like, I've got to let that flow. And I got the right people around me. I joined a support group. I got a therapist. You know, I found professionals to help me because my family couldn't. They wanted to, but like, they didn't have the skills to help where I needed it. And when I shifted my inner world, I didn't know about the law of attraction. And that is actually a secondary law, the law of vibration, which states that in this world, as true as gravity is, vibrations attract, and like vibrations will bring in like vibrations, and everything's energy, you know? So what I didn't know I had done was I'd shifted my internal energy. Like, every emotion, you know, has a frequency. And when you're in fear and doubt and anger and suffering and all that, it's a very low frequency. And you will only attract in situations that perpetuate that, which is wild. Like, you'll watch people cycle down. This is why. You also watch people cycle up. This is why. So I was in this state of joy and gratitude within. And all of a sudden, I attracted in the answer to my physical issues. We got a phone call from an acupuncturist. She had known my mom. She'd been a student of hers at the studio. And she said, I've started using this incredible technology in my practice. It's called REDOX signaling. And she said, it's helping every client. And she went on to say, it's helping some with hormone issues, like it's balancing out their hormones. It's helping some with digestive stuff that have had issues with digestion for decades. It's now, you know, repairing. And she said, I've seen it help with skin things. I think it could pass the blood-brain barrier, and it could actually help repair, Danielle. And my mom intuitively was like, this is it. This is the thing we've been waiting for. I wish I had been so open. The biologist in me got in the way. Mom brought this stuff home, and I was like, Mom, this sounds like glorified salt water. Like, what is this lady talking about?
Did it taste like glorified salt water?
Yeah, well, it's like, well, what goes into it is sodium, chloride, hydrogen, and oxygen, which I said, Mom, that's saline. But the body, right? And she's like, no, Danielle. And now I get it, right? Your body's a sack of saline. So the body pulls hydrogen and oxygen from water. But like, think about hydrogen peroxide. It's H2O2. Water's H2O. One more oxygen, you get a very different molecule with a very different function.
Right.
But we see the ingredient water.
Yeah.
You don't think, oh, that can then be used to make hydrogen peroxide. Anyway, so I totally missed this for like 6 months. I'm like, Mom, your friend's involved in a scam. Like, this is ridiculous. I'm not drinking it. The mom's drinking it. And my mom had bone on bone in her hand. She couldn't make a fist. She had so much inflammation in her body. And 6 weeks of drinking that, full range of motion back. And I watched the redness go down. I watched her knuckles go from like looking so awful to like, whoa. And still, I thought it was a placebo. I was like, you imagine that away, Mom. And then my dad, he's like, there's no way she imagined that away. And so my dad starts using it. My dad's a huge athlete, loves to work out. And 10 days into it, wasn't having to wear his knee brace. Now, he had had an injury 30 years prior. He's always had to wear a brace.
Yeah.
And he's like, Danny, like, I don't have to. You know, and I'm feeling like I'm 20 again. Like, I am going further in my running. I'm rowing further. Like, I'm not sore after my workouts. And I'm like, well, take it easy, Dad. Like, it's 55. I'm like, don't overdo it.
Right.
But they said, like, my dad's more analytical, right, than my mom. And so my dad's like, well, let me look at the research on this stuff. So he dives into it. He comes back and he's like, this is massive. This is a breakthrough. It was too new for you to learn about it in school. And he said, and so far, this company is the only one that's figured out how to get these molecules stable because they're very reactive. So you can actually replenish your body's supply. He said, you can't contraindicate with any meds, Danielle. It can't hurt you. It might help you. We're going to buy it for you for 6 months and let's just see what it does.
So you can take it with any medication, no matter what.
Yeah, because I was on like a gabapentin. I was on some intense stuff for my brain. So I had just given up after like a year of migraines like that. It was like, I need a little bit of a reprieve.
Yeah.
So, I had been on that for probably 9 months. And that's what I was most concerned about. I'm like, well, this is already messing with my brain chemistry. Like, I don't want any more. And they said, no, REDOX is already in your system. It's already interacting with whatever meds you're on. The only thing that can happen is like, if you think about medications, they address like a symptom.
Right.
And REDOX isn't going to a certain symptom. It's non-specific. It goes into the root of the issue, the cells, and it repairs the cells. And so they said to me, look, potentially it will repair to the point where you don't need the medication because the symptom's gone. And I was like, well, bless the day that happens. And yeah, I got on this like 3 months in. All of a sudden, the pounding in my head that had been relentless for 2 years stopped. I started to be able to concentrate again. I started to have energy where I didn't have to nap every 2-3 hours. It was amazing. I could do more than one activity in a day, you know, and I started to get my life back. And I'll never forget my cognitive therapist. I was seeing her weekly, and she said, Danielle, I've worked with people with your type of injury for 30 years. I've never seen someone have such a rapid recovery so far out from the initial trauma. She said, with your type of injury, it doesn't happen. What the hell is that stuff you started drinking? And I had to laugh because I said, I thought it was saline. I said, I have no idea what it is. And she was the catalyst, and a catalyst that, I mean, it's like amazing when you look back at life and how things are connected, because that was about 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And because of her asking, we got on the phone with a gentleman. His name's Dr. David Silverman. He explained to her what it was, how it worked, why my situation wasn't unique. And I remember getting off that call with just like, you know, when you have those moments when like, it's like light bulb. Yeah, it's just like everything connected. And I was like, the potential of this is massive. It could help an animal. It could help a plant. It could help any human being repair where they're damaged. And I thought, this is what I'm supposed to do. Like, you know, we all go through things for a reason. And I thought, what a position I'm in, because now I've got a degree in biology, so I get the science. I used to be a teacher, and I've been through this traumatic thing, but coming out on the other end, it's like so clear I was meant to find this to help other people on their journeys. And so for 8 years now, I've been educating, I've been sharing, I've helped thousands of people with their health through sharing this, through educating about it, you know. And it's just like, sometimes I look back and I'm like, how did we get here?
Right. How do we get here? You know, I think would be amazing is if we find a way to get the doctor to come on and the three of us have a conversation, because this could really help a lot of people. And I think that would be great if we could make that happen. And
absolutely.
And
yeah,
see.
David is I've gotten to know him really well. I feel like he's like an uncle. Like he's got a daughter around my age. And I mean, the people that I work with, they become like family. So I am sure he loves, like, he's at the phase of his life where he can just give, you know, and he loves to give time to educate on this. So I'll be happy to ask him.
Yeah, that would be great. Well, I am so happy and honored that you found the time to come on and talk with us. I'm going to pause for a bit and see if we can start this again and have the three of us on here and see what we can do to make people better, because it obviously worked for you. So we want to make that happen, and I would love to have you be a part of it.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, let's have a part 2.
Let's have a part 2.
That would be fun.
Thank you so much for your time and for being here with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me on.
Of course.